Kia ora, haere mai ki te aka mātuatua, ki te whariwānanga o Waikato. Welcome to the School of Science at the University of Waikato. I'm Margaret Barber, the Dean of Science. Thank you for joining me on this virtual open day. I'd like to give you some information on our school and hopefully help you decide to come and study science with us next year. First, let's talk a little bit about what science is and who is a scientist. So science is really just a systematic study of the structure and behaviour of the physical world and the natural world through observation and experiment. So you might remember when you were a kid asking questions about how the world worked and why things were the way they were. So science is just putting a structure around that curiosity. So really science is for everyone. So a lot of people have this stereotypical view of what a scientist is. Maybe they're wearing a white lab coat and safety glasses and they're in a laboratory with chemicals and scientific equipment. But scientists are so much more than that. Some of our scientists work out in the beautiful forests, understanding the way these forest systems work and all the other living beings within our forests. Some of our scientists work in the most extreme environments in the world, and here we have scientists working in Antarctica in the dry valleys studying the climate systems of Antarctica. We also have scientists who work in caves underground, and they're using stalagmites and stalactites to understand the past climate of the world, which is recorded in the structures within caves. Or we have scientists that study the ocean, who love being out on the ocean and want to understand how the marine systems work. Or they dive underneath the surface of the ocean and look at life and the biophysical processes underneath the surface. So you can see that science is for everyone, certainly for all these people here. So these are our students on a field trip on the Tongariro crossing, and you can see how happy they are to be in such a beautiful environment, studying this environment and understanding how this system works. You might think, what has science done for me lately? Well, I'll give you a couple of really good examples of where science is really, really important in the world today. And the first is the obvious one, the pandemic. So this has created huge change and huge upheaval all around the world. In New Zealand, we're particularly lucky that our decision-making around the pandemic was driven by science and scientific evidence. And so here are 7 examples of scientists from New Zealand who contributed to the New Zealand response to the pandemic through their scientific expertise. And this has meant that New Zealand has been almost completely untouched by the pandemic, except that our borders have been closed for a little while. We are lucky that we have scientists such as these 7 people in New Zealand to help us through the pandemic. But in sort of a more longer term issue is climate change. And science has an awful lot to offer as we study the Earth's climate systems and as we try to come up with solutions to this long-term problem of climate change. So you could be a scientist, and we can talk about the different subjects that you could study as a scientist here at the University of Waikato. So we have a bunch of subjects, and we call them majors, that fall within the very broad discipline of science. So aquaculture and chemistry, earth sciences, ecology and biodiversity, environmental sciences, materials sciences, cellular and molecular biology, and psychology. These are all different disciplines of science that you can study here at the university. And then complementing these majors, these big scientific subjects, are minors. So these are smaller groupings of subjects, papers to make up subjects. And from the list above, we also add animal behaviour and biochemistry, coastal processes, and geology and hydrology, but also soil science. So you've got a really wide range of different subjects to study within a Bachelor of Science. So you would choose the right combination that best prepares you for what you want to do in your career after your science degree. So some of these subjects are only available in Hamilton, on our campus in Hamilton, but aquaculture is available only on our campus in Tauranga. And this is because we can take advantage of the proximity of the beautiful marine ecosystems near Tauranga for our students to get really in the environment and really understand how it works. So aquaculture is available only in Tauranga, but you can study environmental sciences both on our Hamilton campus and our Tauranga campus. And that's because environmental sciences and aquaculture fit really nicely together and they're a nice complement for each other. So at the university, we think it's really important that you transition from studying into the workforce really easily, and we provide you with a range of options to help start your career as a scientist. So one of these options is a capstone project. This is in your third year, so the final year of your degree, where you'll work with a group of students on a project. You'll be developing teamwork skills and communication skills and also problem solving skills in this group. So that's one option. Another option is an undergraduate research project. So if you are pretty sure that you want to be a research scientist, this is a great option for you in your third year as an undergraduate student to do some real research. This is authentic research project, so creating new understanding and new knowledge of our systems. And this gives you a little taster of what it's like to be a research scientist before you commit to a postgraduate qualification in scientific research. And then if you are pretty sure that you want to start being a scientist in a lab or in the field straight away after you graduate, we have options of work placement. So this is 10 weeks of work experience. It's usually paid, and it's in a business or organisation that's relevant to your major as a scientist. And so these are three options to allow you flexibility for the next stage of your career development. So a lot of students might be asking, well, why would I study at Waikato? Why would I go to study there rather than a different university? And I would offer these 5 points of difference for you to consider when you're looking at which university you go to. In the School of Science, we have world-class facilities. These are cutting-edge research techniques that you can use as an undergraduate student, depending on which papers you choose. You'll get a chance to be involved and use real research equipment. We really stress the importance of hands-on learning. So a lot of scientific techniques require you to be practical and to interact with instruments and the natural world. And we offer lots of opportunities, both in the lab and with field trips for our undergraduate students to learn hands-on. As I've mentioned, we have a number of options to allow you to transition from your studying into your career. And these are flexible. So we allow you to choose which subjects you like and then choose the next stage of your career and help you prepare for that. Because our classes are small, we offer a personalised experience. So your lecturers and your tutors will know your name. You won't be just a number among hundreds of students. We'll know your name and we'll look after you. And really important to us at the University of Waikato is that we embed Mā Tauranga Māori in our degrees. So this is a really important part of being a scientist in Aotearoa, New Zealand now and into the future. And it's so important that we put it in prominence within our degree. And you'll learn it as you go along, but you'll also learn it in a separate paper as in third year. Okay, so we've talked about the degree. What about careers? There are jobs, lots of jobs available for scientists. So I had a quick look on the SEEK website for jobs that require scientists a few days ago, and I found 230 jobs, more than 230 jobs in New Zealand that require science training, and more than 60 jobs alone requiring a Bachelor of Science. So let's have a closer look at the kind of jobs that are being advertised right now. So perhaps you are one of the people who wants to work in a lab coat with safety glasses in a lab. There are jobs available for people like that. So here's an example of a job in Christchurch working in a lab with pathogens. Or perhaps you're someone who prefers to work with data and works on a computer. So here's a job for a hydrologist modeller with a consultancy company requiring a Bachelor of Science, Environmental Earth Science, particularly in hydrology. Or perhaps you're someone who really would rather be out in the forest. There's a terrestrial ecologist job being advertised right now with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, where you'd be working with the Regional Council to help protect our native species from biodiversity threats and from invasion of other species into the environment. Talking about invasion of other species, here's a really interesting job based in Wellington with the Ministry for Primary Industries, looking at biosecurity risk. So this would probably be in an office in the middle of the city, as opposed to some of the other jobs which are you'd be more based in the regions and you'd be getting a lot of work in the field. This one would be, I suspect, working in the central government as part of the government. So a huge range of different options for jobs when you have a Bachelor of Science. So let's just talk a little bit about what the degrees that we offer and how they're structured. So I've mentioned the Bachelor of Science a couple of times, and it's our main degree. It's a 3-year degree, and you'll study 8 papers each year. There are a number of papers, and they're in the light grey boxes here, that are required for the degree. And 2 of them are around science numeracy, and then there's fundamental papers as well. And you can see in the 3rd year, the Science and Tauranga Māori paper and the Work Integrated Learning paper, that career transition paper. And then in the red boxes, you would choose a subject or a major that you're most interested in. Maybe it's chemistry, maybe it's ecology and biodiversity, or maybe it's aquaculture. And then you would also choose other subjects. Now these could be from science, and you might like to choose a minor subject from science, but they could also be from anywhere around the university. Maybe you'd like to do a music paper or maybe a philosophy paper. That's all possible within the Bachelor of Science degree. If you're really certain that science is what you want to study, you might like to consider a double major. This is where you choose 2 main subjects. They have equal weighting. So perhaps you want to combine environmental science and chemistry, or ecology and biodiversity and earth science. You can do this with a double major in the Bachelor of Science. Our other main degree is the Bachelor of Science and Technology, and that has a slightly different structure. You can see that in the final year, in the 3rd year, and that is because we place more emphasis on the work integrated learning here, and we have a science work placement that's worth 2 whole papers. So a really important commitment to transitioning into a career in science within the Bachelor of Science and Technology. You can see that you do the same, other papers are identical, and you'd choose a major in exactly the same way, but you'd have a larger opportunity to have a work placement and real work experience. So I've mentioned this work integrated learning a few times, and that's because as a university we're really committed to preparing our graduates for the workforce. And so we've got this work integrated learning, and I mentioned that there's 3 options as a science student. You can do a work placement, you can do an individual project, or you can do a group capstone project. This gives you the opportunity to get paid while you study and also provide more practical experience. This could be in the lab or it could be in the field. There's also the opportunity to build networks with employers and with industry when you're in your work placement, or your the other options for the WIL papers, the Work Integrated Learning papers. So why choose Waikato? Well, obviously the Work Integrated Learning gets you ready for your transition into your paid employment as a scientist. I've also mentioned flexible degrees, so you can choose subjects and combinations that you like. You can also choose papers outside science if you'd like to. We have a huge range of scholarships for our students, and you'll get to interact with and be taught by award-winning lecturers for a world-class education. We really have 2 wonderful campuses in Hamilton and in Tauranga, and in both cases we've got student accommodation on campus to allow you that real student experience. So I really hope to see you in 2020 doing a science degree with us at Waikato. Just a reminder of a couple of dates. Scholarship applications close at the end of this month, and accommodation applications close at the beginning of October. Applications to study at the university are open right now, so you can apply right now. Thanks a lot for joining me, and I hope to see you next year at the University of Waikato in the School of Science.